This is Support is Sexy, episode 503, with Nadiyah Spencer, founder of Bradshaw Consulting Group. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm happy to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. Tell the truth. Do you do a little body roll when you hear the intro music for the podcast? I do. Am I the only one? Okay, it's fine. I don't like to dance alone, but it's fine if you let me dance alone. Either way, I'm happy to have you here. And again, it wouldn't be the same without you. And I am so excited to welcome our guest today, Nadiyah Spencer. And Nadiyah is not only a lovely woman, but she is the founder and CEO of Bradshaw Consulting. Now, if you are someone who is interested in the fashion industry, not even just, well, I guess from a designer standpoint, of course, but also behind the seams, like that? Behind the seams. See what I did there? Nadiyah takes us behind the seams. So not only what goes into designing a line, but Nadiyah has expertise in product development and production and sourcing and so many of the other things that a lot of us, especially as consumers, but don't necessarily think about when it comes to what goes into creating all of these beautiful pieces and clothing that we love so much. And even as people who are interested again in becoming designers and working in the fashion industry, there's so many other levels to this that a lot of us don't consider. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. Tons of great information as always. So without further ado, Nadiyah Spencer. So Nadiyah, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
I'm excited to chat with you as well, Elayne.
So tell us, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Wow. I think as a young girl, maybe middle school, I would say, is when I said I can see myself maybe one day. It didn't really resonate until later, but I love the fact that my mom opened a bodega in our community. She realized that there wasn't a lot of women of color who owned bodegas in a town that had a lot of people of color. So she opened up with a bodega called What's in Store Roz, and it sold just about everything you would need in a little corner grocery store. And then she was the first to have like a slushy machine that wasn't in 7-Eleven. And I remember how kids were so excited. I remember her adding on layers, adding a grill, because my family's Muslim, so we ate halal. So she wanted to make sure that people could have food that wasn't necessarily cooked with other ingredients that we couldn't, and that was the first in that community. So I think if I were to really credit this journey, would be seeing my mom as a young woman realizing that there was a need for a service of like hers to have a small bodega with a community feel, a motherly feel, a nurturing feel. So I would credit her.
What neighborhood was this in? This is where you grew up?
This is where I grew up, in Plainfield, New Jersey.
Nice. And what was it like to see the community respond to your mom opening up this place for them?
Oh, it was amazing to see older women, older men walk through, feel safe. She put tables in front so people were playing checkers. She would have speakers, so live music was playing. It was just awesome to see how immersed she came into community. She started doing bus trips to Great Adventures.
Oh, wow.
Paying for kids to have swim lessons, tennis lessons. She grew up in Plainfield, New Jersey, so it was her town. But I think how people rallied around her was really beautiful.
How would you describe yourself as a young person growing up in Plainfield, New Jersey?
Very curious. I would say maybe I wouldn't say introverted, but maybe a little bit. Like the extrovert I am now wasn't the girl who was then.
Mm-hmm.
I was just always involved because of my mother and my father, I should say. They both had a hand in making sure that we were always active. So because of them, I was a community activist, going to any local rallies or heading out to DC for Million Family March, Million Women March, Million Man March. So I think growing up, I was always just involved, playing tennis to lemonade stands, you name it. We were a family that took pride in our community, in our small town.
Mm-hmm. Now, where did the interest in fashion come from?
Wow. I think we were always, I guess this interview is going to be about mom, because I think because of her business,
It's all
she had a
about
tax,
mom.
all about mom. She had a tax ID, right? So she was a younger mom. So she was always super cool, super fresh. I remember her and my dad, first concert we ever went to was Houdini and D Nice.
Ooh,
And
nice. I would go to that
yeah,
concert now.
and to go that now. So they would take us to the city with their tax ID to go shopping in a garment district or in the village. Back in the day, I'm in my early 40s. West 4th Street and 6th Avenue was huge for all kinds of like really funky clothing and boutiques that
Right.
unfortunately don't really exist today.
In New York, for everybody
In New
listening.
York.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Sorry. So I was always in Manhattan shopping with her and seeing that, wait a minute, with this number, we can get a bulk rate and bulk discount.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So I think that kind of got my wheels turning about what it might take to one day do something.
Now, you said she was a young mom. How old is a young mom?
She had my oldest brother at 19 and me at 21. And
Mm-hmm.
my baby brother at 22. So we were all we grew up together. All
Right,
of
right.
us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very close in
Yeah.
age, yes.
Very close in age. Yeah. All of us.
So after, let's say after high school, what was your plan? Did you go to school to study anything in fashion? What was your next step?
I went to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was an English major, writing minor, and my intent was to go to law school. And
And
that was the
Spelman was
plan.
a long dream of yours, right?
It was a long-standing dream since I was about 13 years old. I said I want to go to Spelman College after seeing a special on them on PBS.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was the plan. And ironically, very, I guess, serendipity would be the word to use. There was a young woman who came out a year prior to me who was walking on campus with, now I know, this gentleman who was the head of HR for a training program that Gap Inc. had just started, called the Retail Management Program. And they stopped me, and this young lady, who I'll never forget, Shayna Seymour, who's a newscaster now in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
Massachusetts, says, Rob, this is Nadiyah. This is the young lady I was telling you about. I like her style. And I remember them coming up to me and like, hey, would you be interested in a job at Gap? And I very flippantly, didn't really know who he was. I was like, I don't have all these loans to fold sweaters. Not
Oh,
really interested.
look at you, Miss Spelman.
Exactly. And Rob was like, oh, she has personality. And
That
he's
was a
like,
nice
well,
way of saying it.
it was, yeah, really. And then he asked me to just come with him and talk. I distinctly remember my outfit. I had on ripped Levi's, a tank top, a cowboy hat, and cowboy boots. Just had it on. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember walking into Spelman's career planning office, and it was all these students from Morehouse, Clark, Spelman, Morris Brown, lined up in their traditional dark suit,
Right.
hose, shoe. They were ready to interview their portfolios, their resumes. I had none of that. Absolutely none of that.
And here you come with
And
the cowboy hat and boots.
here I come with a cowboy hat and boots and not a stitch of paperwork in sight. I don't know how they took me seriously, but ironically, they liked me and they had me recite a poem. That's what I did. I recited a poem during my interview. It
Why'd
was
they have you
really,
recite a poem? Did you have
because
to mention you were into poetry?
I mentioned that they asked why I had to go to Spelman and I didn't have a resume. So they said, tell us something about yourself and what made you stand out as a candidate for Spelman. I was like, well, I wrote a poem here about what this school meant to me as a young girl. And I recited it in my high school graduation. They said, can you remember that poem? Can you recite it? And I was like, you sure? And I did. And lo and behold, I made it to the next round. So
Oh my goodness. But at that point, were you interested at all? Or were you interested or were you just intrigued? Like, let me go see what they're talking about.
I was intrigued
Mhm.
because I didn't know, but I always knew I had an affinity towards fashion. I just didn't know that this program existed, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I was intrigued as well as interested, I would say. And my next phase was doing a project. I had to go to the Gap store and tell them what I felt was missing in their retail lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was raining on my way going there, and I was taking the MARTA train. That's the subway system in Atlanta. And getting there and realizing they had all these items and accessories that coordinated hats that matched sneakers, belts, no umbrellas. So I said, you know what? You guys have all these items, but you don't have umbrellas. Maybe you should invest in a few of those.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all she wrote. Elayne, I was flown to San Francisco for a face-to-face interview with over 300 seniors nationwide, from Harvard to Yale to Stanford to Berkeley to Howard, Emory, kids from all over, interviewing for 30 spots in this program. And I made it in.
Wow. So this was at this point the third leg of the interview process, I guess. So you had your first one at Spelman, then you had to go to the store, and then you had to go to San Francisco.
Exactly.
Wow. So what was it like then being in the program, or not? What was it like? I should say. How do you feel like that shaped who you are today as the owner of your own fashion consulting business, the Bradshaw
It had
Consulting Group?
it had everything to do where I am today. Every single thing. It was a program that had a concentration in the four major facets of retail, which is merchandising, um, production, planning and distribution, and marketing. And you did a rotation, a 3-month rotation in each of those sectors. And I was one of the few people that actually really liked production. And production is the manufacturing of, or the overseeing of goods, all parts to make a whole. And I really, really, really had a wonderful experience in that rotation. There's a woman I would credit. Her name is Michelle Greer, who was my first production boss in this rotation. And Gap had just started a collection called 1969 that was only opening in Japan at the time, in Harajuku. And I was working on that launch with this woman, this African-American woman, Michelle Greer. And I just loved how energetic it all was. It always speaking to the factory owners, emailing at all hours of the day and night, but always going to these particular manufacturing facilities to check on your product. And I felt like you were really hands-on more so than other areas in fashion to me, because you had a hand in the final outcome of what you brought the designer's vision to life. You were helping to bring the goods to stores so distributors could distribute, and you were helping to build a product so marketers could market. So I felt like production was a very important cog in the fashion and retail sector. And I learned that from that experience.
And that's interesting because that's something that people don't necessarily, I shouldn't say people don't, as someone from outside of fashion and just what I see, usually people are more focused on the designer part of it, or of course the part where you're in the store, then the runway, and then the part where you're in the store. But like you said, this is such a crucial part of the business that people might not think about.
You don't, and you don't know it really exists until you're in it.
Right.
And it gave me the opportunity to see the world. I've been on every continent except Antarctica and Australia for clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Meeting with textile mills and factories, and negotiating the final rate, or making sure like the factory was an ethical one. Were the garments made in a manner that you feel happy with, that you can stand behind? All those things, international business comes into play, and the morality of fashion. I learned that with doing this business, particularly with a brand called Edun. After I left Gap, I started working with a brand called Edun. I went a few places, but Edun, this woman, Michelle, who was my first introduction into production, she started Edun with Bono of U2 and his wife.
I think I
And
own a pair of their shorts. I remember that. I remember that brand.
yeah,
I know that brand, I should say.
yeah, they were an amazing brand. And this same woman who introduced me to production called me and said, Nadiyah, do you want to learn production in another way? Come with me. Let me teach you how to produce non-traditionally. And I'm like, what do you mean, Michelle? What are you talking about? And I remember going on a plane, and I was in Madagascar checking on sweater yarns and looking at shirting mills. And next thing you know, I'm in Tunisia, I'm in Uganda, I'm in Tanzania, I'm in Kenya.
And you
So
were
I went.
this is when you were working for Edun.
This I was working for Edun. So
Okay.
this was taking production in a whole nother avenue. You know, you're used to, you know, your major Asian countries, your China, your Sri Lanka, your Vietnam, your India, as being a lot of the manufacturing facilities outside of, you know, the U.S. Um, Never in my wildest dreams did I know that it was possible to produce on the continent of Africa in this magnitude, and it was. So the same woman who introduced me to production globally with Gap also introduced me to production globally as well, but in another avenue. And what I learned from this experience that was different than the others is living wages, Elayne, how these people were making a salary. Was it fair? Were the conditions fair? Were they allowed tea breaks? How far apart were their sewing desks? Was there sufficient lighting? Was there a bathroom I could use as well as they could use? So I really had to change the way I thought about manufacturing and look at it in a humane way. And no longer could you turn a blind eye like, okay, I got this, you know, you see this shirt at an amazing price. Like, what did it cost to get it at that price?
What did it really cost?
So what did it really cost?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this experience really, really, really changed my life forever. And I think that experience probably, unbeknownst to me, was the true catalyst for Bradshaw Consulting Group.
How long were you there with Edun?
I was at Edun for about 2-3 years, and from Edun I moved on to a brand called Suno. I helped start this brand, which was really kind of came in and helped them bring their manufacturing and their ethos together. And they focused on Kenya. The owner of that brand had collected textiles in Kenya for years, and post-election violence in 2008, wanted to give something back to a country he adored. And that was to produce garments solely in Kenya. And because of my experience with Edun, I was well versed for this because I was producing throughout the sub-Saharan region. Kenya was one of the countries I was working in, but not only. Where this became one of the main countries I worked in was Kenya. And I just fell in love with Kenya and lived there sporadically on and off for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Now, Suno went on to win. Didn't they win a CFDA award?
They did. We won CFDA Swarovski Emerging Designer of the Year.
That's amazing. So what was it like then with working with Suno? Did you come in the beginning stages?
Very beginning.
Very
Very
beginning.
beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was it like to see, or not even just to see, to participate in helping the company grow to that level? What was that journey like?
It was a beautiful struggle. We made a point to really use African textiles. And after a while, which was unique in the sense that the other companies that might have been producing there were shipping yardage there. They weren't necessarily using these East African textiles to bring about luxury garments.
So
So
they would
that
ship
was amazing.
their garments to Africa, have it made there, and then distribute it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Whereas how Suno started was using African textiles to make their garments. And we did that for a few seasons. And then it came to the point where people were saying, that's great, but we need more diversity in fabrications. And unfortunately, there weren't a lot of textile mills where fabric is made in sub-Saharan Africa. So what we started to do was bring in yardage like others, but we were using prints that were derivative of the region. So it was always paying homage, but we had to kind of step up some of, like, there's certain fabrications that were hard to find, like a CD silk, a CDC, like a crepe de chine at a certain weight, or a silk wool blend. These are things that as we were going into the more luxury sector, we had to step up our fabrication base, but we always kind of kept it to its core by still using certain textiles. And one thing I am proud to say, we helped build a luxury sample room in Kenya, and I helped train these sewers to make goods that will end up selling, you know, at Neiman's and Barney's, Bergdorf, Saks. And that was probably one of the most rewarding experiences of my career, is to partner with this woman who already had a larger factory. They were doing Kenyan military uniforms. And she also had a small, she and her husband, I should say, and she had a small workshop where she had women who were, some were had disabilities, some didn't, but just a small group of women who were beating things. So myself, Max, and Aaron at the time, who were the design and creative director and founder of Suno, met with her and proposed her helping us to build a luxury sample room within her facility.
Mm-hmm.
So picking out the lighting to the floor, shelving, all those things was a part of this new role. There's a beautiful, beautiful woman by the name of uh, Ruth Mukami, who was a Kenyan native, who became my right hand because I couldn't be there 24/7, who we trained to kind of be our eyes and ears. And she helped bring this venture to life. And it was, I cannot speak to you about how, as an African-American woman, how immensely proud I was to see this venture happen, how I cried the day the floor was being put in. Because can you imagine, I go back to the story, the young girl in Plainfield, New Jersey, whose mom had a local bodega, is now helping to build a sample room in East Africa, in Nakuru, Kenya. Who would have
Right.
thought?
Right.
Who would have thought? Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. And that I love full circle moments. Anytime I talk to someone, you just never, sometimes you don't even think about how it's all related or how it all affects you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So now at that point when you were with Suno, had you started Bradshaw Consulting Group, or did you do that after that experience?
I did that after that experience. So I was with Suno for about 5-6 years, and I got married and was pregnant with my first child, and decided that I wanted to be home with my baby. And
Because you were traveling so much.
I was traveling so much, and Suno allowed me to do that. The founder of Suno uh, just worked with me, and an offer I couldn't refuse, where I was pretty much allowed to work at home for a year with a salary continuance, and that's unheard of, and full insurance, and that's unheard of. So I was able to be at home with my child, and at that time, my husband started law school, and when I was maternity leave, not even maternity leave because it was only 3 months, but I got a year, I decided that I didn't want to necessarily go back into the workforce because of what my husband had going on, and then what, being this mom of this new baby boy, I wasn't ready to hit the road. So that's how Bradshaw Consulting Group really came to fruition. I realized that I did have a lot to offer, because while on maternity leave, people were emailing me about jobs left and right, what I consult, what I come on as a freelancer, and all these small projects. And I said, wait a minute, why don't I take this energy that I'm getting, that the universe is pointing towards me, and make something out of it? Years ago, Elayne, my husband, had started the name Bradshaw Consulting Group out of the blue. Like, he said, one day you're going to need this. This is maybe in like 2006 he started this.
Is that his last
And
name, Bradshaw?
and even nope, my last name, that's my maiden name. My married name is Spencer.
Oh,
But
okay.
he just liked the way it sound. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
he
was going
did
to
the
ask where it
whole
came from. Nice.
yeah, he did the whole trademark and patent the name and all that good stuff. And he said, wait, why don't you already have a business name? You already have a tax ID, go for it. And I actually, a young lady who worked with Suno doing a sweater freelance design, reached out to me. She was part of an incubator in Brooklyn, at the Brooklyn Fashion Design Accelerator. And there was a young lady who had just left Alexander Wang, who was starting her line and had heard about me and wanted to meet. And I remember driving to meet with this young lady over in Crown Heights section of Brooklyn, and us hitting it off. And she became the first client of Bradshaw Consulting Group. And that's how we came to be. And I helped build her business from soup to nuts. Mills, fabric mills, yarns, suppliers in the US, Asia, Italy, Peru, you name it. LA, I did it all with this young lady. And our first fashion show culminated in being on the cover of Vogue.com. They're like, basically, who are these people? And I realized I had a niche at helping startups get started.
Right. So that's amazing. So what stage then would you say that most of your clients come to you? Like when they come to you, what do they need? Do they need help starting the line, or they need help figuring out distribution, or what is it? Well, you said with this young lady you worked with before, what brand was that? What line was that?
It was called Phelan.
Okay. And that was, you worked
Mm-hmm.
with her soup to nuts. So are most of the brands that come to you at that stage where they say, this is what I'm doing, this is, I need help putting it all together?
Exactly. Most are really, really, truly beginners. Amanda, the owner of Phelan, she had amassed and had a small capsule, but she hadn't done like real costing to bring this to life. So that's where I came in and kind of look at all, everything from your trim, meaning your zippers, your buttons, your yarn, your fabric mills, all those things. And that was one of those starts. Some people I work with, they might have already started, maybe had a small run, few dresses, a few items, might have produced a very small collection and realize they're onto something, but they don't know how to take it to the next level. Like who are the best sample rooms and manufacturers to use for cut and sew? What mills would take me on? And the reality is, Elayne, that sometimes you can have this amazing idea, and you're onto something, but you don't know how to bring it to life. And that's kind of where I come in, because not everyone knows that there's mills that exist. And when I say the word mills, it's usually meaning the place that makes your yardage, whether it be your woven mill or knit mill or sweater mill.
And
That's what I
yardage
bring
is
to
your
the
fabric.
table with your fabric, yep.
Mm-hmm.
So because I've worked with a plethora over the years and I've built a rapport, I can get a lot of my clients into mills that they never had the opportunity to get into, because they don't know that they can afford the minimums. And when I say the word minimum, I mean, like if you're only doing 20 pieces of something and you really only need about 40 yards, but the mill has a requirement of 300 yards for that particular article, that could kill your bottom line if you only need 40, but you have to be beholden to 300. And that's where Bradshaw Consulting Group in. I'm going to get you that 40 at the max 65, but you're still way lower than you would have independently of me. So I've learned how to figure out stock scenarios, stock positions, what factories or mills have leftover yardage or have yardage that they run traditionally every season, or things that don't require a large minimum, meaning a lot to buy. Your price per yard might be higher, but you're not beholden to a lot of yardage. So I've kind of worked out a really good system of working with a lot of suppliers where my clients don't lose their shirts, if you will, and paying for so many things that they really just don't need.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is something that you wish more newcomer fashion brands knew about the business overall?
Just really knowing that you have something and believing in it, but also being realistic and knowing that, like, don't come to me and say you want to be the next Zara, because guess what? Zara's already the next Zara.
Mm-hmm.
So
Zara's already got that covered.
they got that covered. So what is your demographic? What are you working with? I don't take on clients just because, oh, you need me and I can take this on and fill my bank account. If I don't feel like your idea has been sussed out and you have a real demographic you are working towards, I don't want to take your money. And because I don't know where you're going with it. So I would say have a real solid business plan of where do you want to go, what it takes to get there. And then your outlets. Are you going to be online? If you're going to be online, how are you driving traffic to your site? If you're going to be sold to wholesale accounts, how are you getting there? Are you going to have a salesperson? Are you going to be hitting the pavement to do it? Because I don't do those things. I am purely product development and production and sourcing. I will bring your ideas to life in a manner you want, at the price you want, and at the time you need it. But I'm not that girl who's going to sell it and market it for you. And I have to draw the line somewhere, So some people come to me and think I'm going to do it all. No, I'm going to give you a beautiful, beautiful garment, no matter what it takes, when you need it, at the cost you need it to be at. And that's what Bradshaw Consulting Group does. But make sure your other layers, your sales portals are accurate, and your online portal, whatever presence you're going to rely on, you have that figured out, because you don't want to have a bunch of beautiful inventory that you can't sell.
Right. I'm wondering in your business, because I think that's important for everyone to hear, that you make sure to draw the line and make the distinction, like, this is my focus. I don't do all of these other things. Because I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs, especially just starting out or trying to get our footing and figuring out where our own sweet spots are, we might feel like, oh, I have to do everything for my client, or if they want this, I have to do that too. But it sounds like you've gotten very clear over the years that, no, this is my area of focus. You have to find those other things. Did you always have that, or did that come over time?
It came over time, because I would introduce, certain clients to sales professionals that I know, have them take meetings with them. There's a few retail outlets I know very well, different owners of boutiques. One owner of Nordstrom, actually, Nordstrom Space. There's a beautiful woman, Olivia Kim, who I randomly invited to Phelan's first fashion show, and she loved it and ended up writing our biggest order ever. But that was a once in a lifetime opportunity. I can't make lightning strike like that again.
Right.
So I'll invite people that I know in the industry to whatever you might be holding as a client of mine, your trunk show or your fashion show. If they bite, they bite. But I'm not going to force it on them, because that's, again, not what I do, nor do I want people in the industry to think, oh, Nadiyah's inviting me to this for her client to get them to the door. I don't want to put that pressure on them either. So I make it very clear that I will help out with your trunk shows. I will be there at your fashion shows. I will be in the back steaming. I'm your girl for all those things. But as far as how you really, really get your garment out to the marketplace, I have to draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I had to.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Because that's, like I said, I think a lot of us in obviously different industries, but especially in the beginning, we can be all over the place. And some of it is you finding your way. But then at a point I've experienced this, I should say, start to spread yourself too thin, and you start to have to say, no, that's not this, but I can refer you to someone. I think that's always
exactly
good, right.
Yeah. It's not my wheelhouse. And that's exactly what I've done. I've done that. I've been referred people to salespeople that I may know, PR people,
right.
Different, whatever level that they might need. And I think, and I will curate who I introduce them to. I might not introduce you to Black Frame PR right now. You're not there yet, but I might refer you to someone who's a freelance who might have worked with them, at one point in time, and he or she can give you the attention they need. But you're not necessarily ready for a big time PR firm, nor can you afford their monthly bill. So I also keep that in consideration, like looking at their business as a whole and seeing where they stand, and if these different people in my Rolodex can help them, and can they afford it.
Right. And that's as much of value, I think, sometimes as doing it for someone. That can be as valuable.
I didn't think about it that way, but thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's money, right? Not that you have to charge for it. I mean, you could, but still, I think that's being a connector. It's just still, that's as valuable. Like you said, with having a woman come to the show and then she writes this big order, you just never know. So that is,
you never know. Yeah.
Definitely valuable. So what would you say that for any of the women entrepreneurs, and a few good men, I always like to say, listening to the show, what would you say are some of the costs, if you can think of off the top of your head, that some designers or brands need to think about, but they might not be thinking about? Obviously, this is in the early stages. So I ask that because I have some friends who work in different parts of fashion, and they just talk about how, of course, as I mentioned earlier, people see the fashion show, or they see, all these highlights of the business and think, I'm going to start a line, and even celebrities. One of my girlfriends talks about that. She's like, even celebrities see that, but then they get into the business and realize how much money they'll have to actually put out or how much work it is and all that kind of stuff. So I'm interested for anyone listening who's maybe considering, putting a business plan together or starting their own line. What are some of the costs that you find that people don't necessarily consider when they're starting that they should?
If you're not buying fabric locally, you're bringing in. I work with a few designers who love Italian fabrics abroad, and from either India or sometimes China, Turkey, you name it. I've ordered fabric around the world, and they don't necessarily think about customs and duty and freight. So you might love something, and you only need about 40 yards, and I'm gonna get you that 40 yards. And that 40 yards might be $1,000, let's say, all in all. But the freight and tax and duty on that could almost double the cost of that yardage, and people don't think about that. So while you're looking at textiles, if you want to venture out and do mills outside of the U.S. and not buy fabric locally, think about your budget and that you have I always work out a small budget with my all my clients, but this is your fabric as is. This is your cut and sew. This is your patterns, and this is your possible freight and duty. And they're always shocked to see that because that is a hidden expense you don't think about until it slaps you in the face. Like when you have to clear those goods out of customs. I make all my clients very aware that if you want this beautiful yardage from overseas, know that it's going to cost to get here. And in logistics, I don't think a lot of designers think about the logistics of it all, how to get all these parts here and make a whole. And that small part, customs, freight, duty, is part of logistics. And knowing that that exists and that's real and that's a cost that you have to account for.
What would you say you're most proud of about Bradshaw Consulting? Other than having the name trademark before you even started the business. That's
just seeing my clients' ideas come to life in a manner in which they expected it to, and like they're really happy about and they don't realize that they can do this. They don't realize they can work with some of these mills. I had a client who I took to a mill recently, and this mill does a lot of Celine and Balenciaga, the row, and they were shocked that they were in the same, speaking to the owners of this mill that are doing these lines. And they was like, wait a minute, I'm with the same people doing these brands that I aspire to be. And I'm like, yeah, let's not talk about it, let's be about it. So to see how excited they are to be able to walk into certain these rooms or meet with certain future business partners that can help bring their vision to life, and they don't really realize it. I'm taking them to the sample rooms I work with. I prefer to work with sample rooms that are open, airy, and clean, and you can sit and have a cup of coffee. A lot of these sample rooms in the States, unfortunately, aren't the nicest, aren't the most aesthetically pleasing. You're like, my garments are made in this chaos. And I don't have that for my clients. I work with some of the best sample rooms that look like luxury ateliers. And they don't know that exists until I come on board. So seeing how they are happy with the product, happy with the cost of the things, happy with how things are being made, means the world to me. It says I'm doing the right thing.
About how many clients does your company support at one time?
About 5.
Vary? Oh, about 5. That's good.
Yeah, 5 to 6. It varies. I recently branched out almost a year now with a perfume company. It was my first time stepping out of fashion only and going into beauty and products of that nature. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. A bit of a learning curve, but again, like I said earlier, it's all parts to make a whole. So if I'm ordering yardage to make a dress and I'm ordering kilos of fragrance to put in the bottle, it's still coming from someplace. I still have to time it. I still have to know how much I need. I still have to deliver a beautiful packaged good. But yeah, I have about 5, 6 that I'm supporting, and I usually keep it at that level. But I'm actually now looking to branch out and bring on a few more people to help Bradshaw Consulting Group, so I can take on more.
Hmm.
I don't want to be so insular that is only me, me, me. And I have freelancers that I work with. I do have a small support staff that I farm things out to.
Right.
I couldn't do this ship alone, but I'm
Exactly.
looking to bring in true in-house support and dedicated support only to Bradshaw Consulting Group within the next couple of months, so I can
Hmm.
really put the meaning of group to
And look, the
bring
way
it to life.
But look, companies that look differently today, a lot of us have where I do the same thing. And a lot of other women entrepreneurs I know, you have the business, of course, and you work with these different contractors and people all over the world helping you, are part of your team, essentially. They're not
Exactly.
dedicated employees, yeah, but they're certainly a part of your team, and all these connections that you have, that's all part of your team. But I hear you with bringing
Exactly.
in-house, yes. So 5 or 6 is great. That's a great, at least for me, it sounds like a beautiful number to do. So what would you
It
say?
is. It is.
What would you say you are, or is there a line, even if it's not your own, or anything, either a line or something that's happening in the industry that you're really excited about right now?
I'm excited about just a look that I see happening, and I see a lot of my clients doing the return of the lady.
Hmm.
And I'm seeing from the brands I work with, from K. Roche to Pirouette to Simon Davis, I'm seeing this polished, elegant woman come in the forefront in different manners. Whether K. Roche might be that elegant lady going to a premiere, Simon Davis might be that elegant lady going to a cocktail party. Pirouette is an elegant lady going from work to happy hour. And I'm realized that I love women's wear, and I did step into men's sportswear not too long ago, and I really enjoyed it. But I think that where my heart lies is really in women's wear. So I'm seeing these strong entrepreneurial women creating these lines that I think are super elegant, super lovely, beautiful fabrics and textiles, and hugging the body in a way that is sensual without being overly sexualized.
Mhm.
And I'm liking that, and I'm liking that I have clients that are ironically all kind of moving in that direction in a different aesthetic.
What would you say that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Juggle, juggle, juggle. Doing all things, and like how can it be done? Like making sure I make my son's t-ball game, making sure I get him to the dentist, getting my dog to the groomer, but still having my laptop in hand and at the game, at the dentist, at the groomer, having my conference calls to make sure that I don't miss a beat. Being a master of juggling multiple things and balancing act is a necessity.
So, in closing, Nadiyah, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Oh gosh. Oh, that's so hard, Elayne. That's so hard.
You told us about all these incredible people.
Uh, this is putting me in the corner, but I would have to say, from a purely Bradshaw Consulting Group in a production standpoint, I'm gonna have to thank Michelle Greer. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't know this industry existed. I wouldn't know that I could do this. She looked like me. She was a boss in so many ways, and she didn't take anything, but she did it with kindness and fairness. And I think I have to attribute this journey, as far as in this sect of fashion, to her, because that's who taught me. And then from Gap doing mass market to coming down to do a luxury market and in Africa was a whole different learning experience, and it made my heart open in different ways. So I really, really, really have to thank Michelle Greer for this one. I wouldn't have known this industry existed, nor that I can do it humanely if it wasn't for
Excellent. See, that was beautiful. Great
her.
tribute to Michelle. Is she still in the business?
She is. She is.
Okay.
She is still in the business. She's based in Atlanta now,
Oh,
doing some consulting. Yeah,
awesome. That is
with a
awesome.
company there. Yeah.
So, what are the ways that we can support you? Tell everybody your website and any social media or anything you want to share. Of course, I'll have links to everything, but just so everybody can hear it if they want to get in touch with you.
I have a website, Bradshaw Consulting Group, www.bradshawconsultinggroup.com. My Instagram is Nadiyah BCG. And I tell everyone this, my Instagram is business and personal, meaning my son and then my business. And why I did that is because my tagline is, I make beautiful clothes for a living, and I made this beautiful little boy. I didn't want it to be so staunch and so like business driven. So I have a mixture of both. I know people like to separate it, but I think you get to see who I am in that manner.
All of your beautiful creations.
Yeah, all of it. So Nadiyah BCG and BradshawConsultingGroup.com. That's how you can reach me, and you can email Nadiyah@BradshawConsultingGroup.com. And I'm here for mentorship. If you want to talk or send the business my way, whatever anyone might need, I'm very open. I know sometimes you just need to have a conversation with someone to see if you can do it. And I'm definitely that girl. Not everything has to be monetized. It could just be having a conversation to say, you know what, you can do this, and I'll support you in whatever way I can.
Amen to that, Nadiyah. Now we can put your email on here, right? I can leave it in there.
Yes, please do.
Okay. I always like to check just to make sure. Excellent. All right. So everyone, you heard her say, you can email her if you have a question about fashion, about the business, something else you want to know, send the company her way. Please reach out. We have an audience that definitely does reach out. So I just want to make sure everybody knows you actually want to hear from them.
That would be awesome.
Excellent. Nadiyah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was fun hearing your story. I knew a little bit about what you do and what you've done, and from talking to Ty, but it was good to hear just about your overall journey and the cowboy boots.
Thank you so much, Elayne. Keep doing what you're doing, because support is essential, and it is important for us as women, just as human beings. And I thank you for what you're doing for us. This is sexy, and I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Parting piece of advice is there's always tomorrow. Sometimes we get so stressed out that we couldn't finish or hit a deadline today, but guess what? Be honest with whoever you're working with and get it done tomorrow. There's always tomorrow.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Nadiyah. To find out more about her and to get links to all of those great fashion resources she mentioned in this episode, the brands, the different companies, the designers, just go to supportissexypodcast.com, go to that search icon at the top and type in Nadiyah, Nadiyah. Her show notes page will pop up with the links and those resources and all the ways to get in touch with her. You heard her say in this episode that you could email her if you have questions, so go ahead and do that. Go to supportissexypodcast.com and just search Nadiyah. Thank you so much for being here. Again, I appreciate you. Please make sure that we are connected on social media at Elayne Fluker at Support is Sexy. Let me know that you're listening. You can screenshot and show it on Instagram and Instagram stories or tweet, Facebook, whatever you're into right now. Let me know that you're out there. I love to connect with you. And until we chat next time, always remember that support is sexy, and having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.